Okay, welcome everybody to the second session on Shidduchim, Hasidic dating, and we're going to be talking about specifically dating. I'm here myself, Mendel Lipsker, with Rabbi Shlomo Bistritsky from Chabad of North Ranch, California, and this program is L'ili Nishmas, Rachaleya Bas Rabbi Shimon Heber Aleh Shalom, and who dedicated her life to making Shidduchim, and hopefully we can bring some beneficial information and learning about the process of dating. So before dating, there is a resume. That's the new thing today. It used to be that Shidduchim were recommended by people that knew both families or knew both people, the Bachar and the girl. I always say, the Bachar and the woman, that it's better to find someone, as we said last time, that knows you both. But the concept is a resume. What's Negeya, why I'm asking this question, is what do you put on the resume? Obviously people that know you and friends, v'chulu, v'chulu. And then there's an issue that comes up a lot about a picture. Should a Bachar see a picture of the woman you're going to be dating before you're going to date or not? Is it un-Hasidish? Should you have it on the resume? So, number one, al-pi Chasidus or Tznius, lav dafke, it's a terrible thing. And maybe it's not wrong at all. It could be that there's an Indian, but there is a side effect that can happen both ways. And you have to really ask the question, do you want it? Is it very important? Or leave it alone? Rabbi Bistritsky, do you have anything to say?
My own opinion when I've been asked about this question, a picture or no picture, I actually think it's better not to have a picture, not because of any issues of tznius, etc., as Rabbi Lipsker said, but more because of expectations. We've all seen pictures of ourselves that we cannot stand looking at and we want it deleted right away. It's just a bad pose. We've seen pictures of people that make them look much nicer than they look in real life, but it also changes the entire experience. So if it's someone that's from another country and they don't know anybody that they can ask for real advice and a real opinion, then, ulai efshar, it makes sense before anyone lays out money, has to fly somewhere, etc. But if you have, first of all, parents that are very involved and they have a way to do their own research, I would rely on parents to do their research, and part of that should be to find out, together with everything else about the girl, is also to find out, does she have all the qualities that they would like for you as a Bachar? But if it starts with the question of, I want to see a picture, not that your parents want to see a picture, that you want to see a picture, I don't think it's starting in the right way, and I'll leave the super Chassidischkeit to Reb Mendel over here. I'm not coming from that angle. I'm coming from a healthy approach to trying to see if there is enough substance to build a relationship on.
Very good. Another question that comes up before we begin with actual dating is, should me, the Bachar, get yourself involved in the research about the woman, or just rely on your parents or your siblings? That's a very good question, and I guess the short answer is, if you feel that they're doing enough research and they know you well, then of course you should rely on them. The Rebbe always says not to mention even the name to the Bachar until it's actually very serious and about to go dating. And the parents and the family are supposed to do the research. The question is, what if you don't think they're doing the research? Or what if you think they're looking for more something about the family image and what's passed for them, and they're not really looking for what's good for you? So then before you date, should you get involved a little bit in the research? It's a very good question. I'll refer to Rabbi Bistritsky.
At what point are you going to answer a question? No,
it's coming.
Okay, so I believe very strongly, and Baruch Hashem, I've already made a shidduch in my home. I believe very strongly that children should not be involved, to let the parents do their homework, to do the research, to make the phone calls, yeshivas, friends, etc. At the same time, you have to be very, very real and honest if your parents, and ask yourself, do your parents really know you? I know Rabbi Lipsker mentioned this at the last session that I was not able to attend. This idea of being true to who you are, addressing any issues that you feel you need to address before you should consider dating. And beyond that is, do your parents understand you? Do they know you? Or are they more concerned with what they want for themselves, for their family? Even if their intentions are best, they may not understand who you are or the kind of girl you want. So personally, I would rely on parents as the first option. If you have any concern whatsoever that they either don't know you well, which comes back to last week's session, or that you're seeing that the things they want for you are not correct, I strongly encourage you involve somebody else that maybe is an older sibling or a mashpia, and maybe the mashpia can call the parents so that you make sure they understand how you're really feeling about the situation. Of course, if you have an open way of communicating with your parents in a healthy fashion, that's always the best. But my advice to Bachram is, parents love you and they advocate for you. There's no stronger advocates for you. Let them do their job unless you're seeing something that concerns you.
Very well put. Okay. So generally about dating. So Amolek Tzaitin, and hopefully today it's going to get a little better. The job of the shadchan is really to set up all the dates and to talk to the bachar and the young woman after every date, to talk to the parents after every date. And the shadchan can be the good middleman to pick up, is there something bothering him, is there something bothering her, how to advance it, and then coach each one. You know, if he's talking too fast, maybe because he's nervous, to tell him about it. Next time, slow down. There's nothing wrong to adjust. And there's dozens of things like that. Versus today, where many shadchanim are just setting up the date, and after the third date, the guy and the girl just want to continue on their own, and there's no monitoring, unser schleptzach, for no good reason, and it never gets serious because it's not going that way. So yes, you should demand from the shadchanim that that should be, or somebody should be talking to both sides after every date, to the bacher and the girl and her parents, if the parents only want the parents, as long as the message is getting through clearly, to feel out, how is this one feeling, how is it going, what's going on, to be able to get a handle on things and help it move faster to decide either way. Otherwise, it's pashut, not fair to a Ben Yisrael and a Bas Yisrael, what's going on today in hundreds of cases, was mishleptzach, and it's just a shame that these things can be resolved so much faster and easier if there would be somebody coaching, which is usually the job of the shadchan. Otherwise, if the dating is getting very serious and the shadchan feel that it's secure and they're okay to go and can continue the dating on their own in the 5th or 6th or 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, whatever today is needed, then that's okay. Another thing about dating is, we live in a world of technology today, and I'm going to have to stress it again and again and again, how unhealthy texting is. I don't know, Bechlal, if he should have her number or she should have his number. Some people want it for technicalities. When they're about to meet, I'm outside with the car for a texting thing. No, ulai. That's another boundary that maybe is too early to have, but I'm not sure. Maybe there should be another person there. That's a Kenish Paskana. I was not born into technology. But afterwards, texting is only reserved for superficial technical things and nothing else. Even after marriage, that's another story. But at least for dating, that's I wanted to mention. So now I'm going to talk about dating, and Rabbi Bistritsky, chime in if you need to. And hopefully many of the questions that were asked and will be asked will be answered automatically. And if there's specific questions, we'll try to address them.
Before you do, on the point of that shadchanim should not be schlepping it out, bachrim and also the girls have to be very empathetic. It's bechlal in a relationship. It's the most important midah that you need to have, is a sensitivity and to know what the other person's going through on the other end. So even once you go on a date, you have to make sure that you give it the right thought and you make it a priority. And if you have a question how you feel about it, you don't schlep out 2 days until you conveniently can bump into your mashpia or your older sibling. But you have to, once you're in the world of dating, empathy has to become a very, very big part of it, unless you need a few days to clear your head. And even then, to send a message through the shadchan, it's not being ignored. I pashut needed a couple of days. There's someone on the other end that is sitting anxiously by the phone, and it's something I cannot stress enough. Bechlal, the midah of empathy. but also the opposite of, not the opposite, but along the lines of schlepping out and going out 8, 9, 10, 12 dates and no one pulling together and making sure it's moving forward is b'chlal the responsiveness after each date on both sides, because people's feelings are involved and everyone's invested in it. And like Rabbi Lipsker mentioned, I think last week, is once you're in the world of dating, it has to be taken very seriously. The Rebbe has given answers about this, and it has to be taken in a very serious way. It has to become the priority, and sensitivity is one of the most important things.
Very good. Again, like I mentioned last time, you can look in Shulchan Menachem and Eternal Joy and Shidduchim V'Nesuyin. There's many hiras from the Rebbe about dating, and it's not here to go repeat them all. They're all available, and you should make yourself familiar with it, obviously. So when you go on a date, there's number one, to be aware of certain things. There's shilos of yichud. If you're taking a taxi, I think that's out of style already, but sometimes there's no parking, so people want to take an Uber. Can you sit in the back seat together with a strange girl? It's a good shaila. Clear it with a rav. Depends what time of day you're going. Is it nighttime? Is it very late at night? These are real shilas. How late should a date go? If you're going very late at night, you have a shaila of yichud if you're driving alone in a car. It's not simple. So these are just things to be aware of. Of course, be on time and be a little bit early. It's pashut, not as mentioned. In a relationship, there's going to be tremendous amount of, for the rest of your life, how much you have to be sensitive to other people's feelings and know what they're going through, which is empathy, which we have a lot to learn in the modern world, especially in the Chassidish world, but in the modern world in general, there's great lacking in it, and that's that. The concept of dating is, number one, the parents made the shidduch, and that was it. But we know in today's world, before even today's world, there was a concept of going to meet the woman. Even today, I hear that some parents want to see the bacher before he picks her up. That's another question. There's nothing wrong with it, depending on the culture. But you for sure have to see her and get to know her to decide if you want to marry her. That's what dating is for. However, dating is with tremendous amount of sensitivity, boundaries, tznius, and privacy. Know where you're driving, what streets you're driving on, the time of day you're going. Of course, not to share any of your dating, if you need to share it with a friend for whatever reason. It doesn't belong in any WhatsApp groups or any texting groups. I'm sorry I have to mention this, but I've heard some strange things about what's going on in today's world. Other people know everything about everybody. It has to be done in a tznius way. The Rebbe mentions it. And also where you go. So where do you go on a date? A date is somewhere where you need to go to be comfortable. It should be quiet. It should be private, a little bit semi-private, obviously. Not too private, a shayla of yichud. And in a relaxed way. So that's where the minhag became in our society. People go to a hotel lobby or another type of lobby. Somewhere that's not outside in front of people necessarily. It's not, that's just the technical how it works in New York. Other places you can go, other places. There's so many places you can go. The point is to be around many people where there's a lot of action and activity and no privacy is a shaila. It's a problem. Another shaila comes up with dating, even we're going to go out to eat. We're going to go out to play. I don't have the Bible on it, and I'm not going to say Chemenish Teirem is Sinai, but I don't get it. If there's an issue and there's a problem, and maybe if you go to a place to play air hockey or something, and that will loosen the situation and be able to help make a decision, enzach. But to make it part of the dating process that we're going to go out for lunch or dinner at a restaurant, that's in the Chassidish, if we're going to call this Chassidish dating, ich hab graces fakes wegen them. And you need to be careful about it.
We never discussed it yet, so you let me know when I can chime in.
Chime in right now.
And maybe after this, I'll be pushed off my chair and out of the video. A couple of other things, just technical things that I've seen and heard from people that have called me, been to issues going on with their children dating. Simple things. A lot of times a bacher doesn't have family, let's say in Crown Heights or out of town, and they rent a car, and the car smells of smoke. So I know a family that was going to Pasel a Shidduch because after the first day they came back, the bacher's a smoker. And but luckily the father said that didn't come up in any research. So I said, so go ask a simple question. There's nothing wrong with calling the shadchan and saying, my daughter smelled smoke. Is he a smoker? Is he not a smoker? And sure enough, they found out he rented a car and there was a smell of smoke. So just understand that everyone's super sensitive to everything going on with the process. And be smart about it, plan it well, know where you're going before. Like Rabbi Lipsker mentioned, both halachically and practically, you shouldn't be getting lost, ending up in a bad area, confused, distracted. The whole plan here is for you and the other person, the girl, being able to be as comfortable with themselves so that you can get to know the other person as quickly as possible. Benageya to going out, Lamashal, to typically a hotel, that also has become a little bit challenging because they're very noisy hotels with loud music going and bars in the lobby, and so it's getting more complicated. It is okay to turn to someone older than you that has dated and say, where is there a place where it's a bakavadika lobby somewhere where there's a little privacy, meaning a table off to the side in a very public area, but without loud music blasting and the whole environment is very distracting. So do your research before. Don't just think of driving into Manhattan, Lamashal, and just going to a hotel to lobby. Do your research. This is about the most important thing in your life, and it deserves all the effort, the patience, the planning. And again, if you have family in the city where you're dating, ask them to do some research for you. They may not be thinking of the things we're talking about tonight. And it's been a long time, by the time our children date, it's been a long time since we dated. The hotels we used to sit in, the lobbies we used to sit in are long gone already. So sometimes the parents are not thinking about these things. Ask these questions. The whole point of these calls, these sessions that we're doing now, is to help you see some of the bigger picture. And even if you're meant to stay out of the way and let your parents do the research, ask a question. Do you know a good place where we can go? Can you ask someone where it's public but a little quiet, etc.? So these are all important things. But Benageya to fun, as Rabbi Lipsker mentioned, I believe every date has to have in your head a matara. Has to have a matara. We don't date extra time once we feel comfortable. That's on the back end. But on the front end, there has to be a matara. A first date is pashit, some basics. Do we have what to talk about with each other? I hate, I always tell Bachram, they go from the innocence of yeshiva, where you're meant to never think about even looking at a girl, to suddenly being thrown in the deep end, where you have to think about things you were told you should never think about, looking at a girl and whether or not you like her looks, you don't like her looks, her personality. It is a transition. It's a confusing transition, but the answers are there. L'mashal, again, this session that we're doing hopefully will give you that insight. So at the beginning, there's different things you're looking for. Was it an engaging conversation? Did I feel that I like the way the person looks? Did we talk a little bit about important things? You want shlichus or not? And we can on that question alone, we can spend 8 sessions of what that question means. That's not the nikud I'm trying to bring up here. So you go through different, the first date at both sides say, it was very nice, very interesting, very engaging. I would like to try again. You have a second date. But it reaches a point sometimes that just sitting across from each other in a lobby at a hotel may not give the whole perspective on the personality. It's much more formal. So, it's looking good, like they say on paper, but does the person give me some joy too? And we're sitting in a lobby and it's not doing it for us. Then there's a reason to maybe say, like Rabbi Lipsker mentioned, you go to a place where there's air hockey, or take a walk through a museum, even if it's not a museum that you are so interested in, but it's more you're outside of the serious environment of sitting across from each other, forced to only have serious conversations. So Rabbi Lipsker is the mashpia you should listen to. Between the two of us, listen to him. But I'm just sharing that I feel there is some great value, especially, and Rabbi Lipsker just started touching on it, especially if there's a concern. Do I like everything I'm hearing, but is she a little boring? So if we go to a different environment, maybe I'll see that she's not boring. There for sure. But even if not, you need to see different things, and then once you have the different experiences, we're going to talk about later, how do you know it's the right girl or not? That helps answer that question.
Very good. And in general, to avoid maybe the problem happening lechatchila, one date you go by day instead of going at night. You find a place, change the environment. You find a place where you can take a walk together. If it's a private, park, or even a park where it's not so around the hotel, to get up, walk around. There's different things you can do. And then, b'chlal ha'araba alma, that sometimes the Eibishter creates during dating all sorts of michshalim, different things, the traffic and no place to park or something spilled, where you can get to see each other in times of pressure and how you handle pressure and negativity, which is extremely important because life is so much full of stress and pressures, and that's where you learn about each other more sometimes than the dating itself. So back to the dating itself. As Rabbi Bistritsky mentioned, and it's for sure important, we don't date stamazoi. Every date has a goal, a matara. What's supposed to be accomplished on this date? Now, there's no Shulchan Aruch, but I'm going to go through some general ideas, and feel free to chime in. And this is important. And maybe, even though today the word out there by mashpiyim and shadchanim is that people need a lot more time to date than it used to be. It used to be 3, 4, 5 dates, that was it. Today, some people are schlepping 8, 9, and 10. I don't know, maybe it's not schlepping. Maybe that's people that just need to be more secure. But if we would put in some value time and preparation and understanding and seriousness into the dating, yes, we would possibly be able to cut it shorter both ways. If it's not the right person, you would know so after 2, 3 dates and not after 10. And if it is the right person, you would be much more sure after 4 or 5 instead of after 10. So, what's supposed to happen in the first date? Some people say it like this. The first date, you need to see if there's anything that completely doesn't make sense for us to be together. In other words, if there's no contradictions between us, if there's nothing that's completely off, completely not my speed, completely, irks or it's just not going to work. It can happen sometimes. If proper research is done, it won't happen on a superficial level, but sometimes on the first date, you have to see if there's anything that's really, really bothering me on both ends. So what's the conversation about? Well, the conversation could just be plain and casual. Something easy to talk about. We can talk about the Hasidic dating sessions because I understand that there's both sides of the gender watching this. But that was just a joke. But talk about your life story, basically, who your family is, who your relatives are, where you grew up, where you went to school, what you did, different trips you did, just different basic chitzoniistic life stories, which can just give the person a perspective, and it strikes conversation. You don't have to feel that it has to get serious. Sometimes it does, because you start feeling comfortable. It does get serious about what your goals are in the future. V'chulu, v'chulu. The Rebbe writes an interesting point. The goal of dating is not to get to know the person thoroughly through and through, because you can't until you're married. That's when you live with someone, you'll have the proper relationship. But you do get to know them, goals, if people are honest, goals, values, and life experience, social type of, what type of family. So you can see if there's compatibility and there's room to make shidduch.
General midas.
Yeah, midas. As I said last time, the 4 mems. Mara, midos, mamain, mishpacha. It's family, character, money, looks, and you just have to put them in the right priority level. But those are things that people, Nefesh Habamis wants all 4. Nefesh Elkis may also want all 4. The Gemara talks about, yichus, the Gemara talks about looks, the Gemara talks about geld, nadin, everything is important. Family is important, everything is important. Character is important. So these are things you can look out for. So the first date, that's what it could be. And therefore, there's no mitzvah to schlep the first date. If it's not getting serious, It doesn't have to get serious. It could just be a very nice casual to see if you're having a good time. You don't have to look for chemistry. Sometimes it's an instantaneous click. Talk about that in a minute. But as long as it's going well and it doesn't get awkward and terrible and something. Now again, you have to expect. Sometimes the first date does go very awkward because everybody's nervous and inexperienced. So you have to give it a chance. That's why there's always a second date. Some people say you go on a first date to see if it's shaykh to go on a second date. That's another way to put it. Also fine. So therefore, unless it's going, I mean, if people like to yap, and sometimes they have to tag, oh, I can finally chat with a woman, so we'll chat 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. So medarfnisht. To accomplish what you need to on the first date, the emesis, from when you get to your destination until you leave, doesn't have to be more than 2 hours. 3, 4, medarfnisht mer. In general, it's a good question. Should dates be schlepped very long? Because it drags on the emotions.
Right. And there's, just to pipe in on this subject, is also, again, we go back to empathy. Is the girl having a nice time? Is she not? How will the date, how do you know when you should end the date? Rely on her to tell you, let's go home? And if you ask her, and then how's she supposed to answer you? It's so sensitive at the beginning, and everyone wants to make sure not, if you're empathetic, then it's, how do I know I should end it? But if you lechatchila, if you talk it through with, again, a mashpia, or if we, this conversation with your parents, and you say, okay, how do I know how long I should make the date, and what's a nice way to end it? Go in with a plan. Personally, I happen to agree with Rabbi Lipsker on this. The first date does not have to be overly long. Sometimes there's pashit, the conversations are really meaningful, and it just flows. So then you extend it a little bit. You have a plan A and a plan B. Plan A, if it's going nice, but still a little bit rigid, because again, there's nervousness, both sides, etc. So you should tell yourself 2 hours into conversation, if we're not in the middle of something of great importance, to make it easy on both. And it doesn't have to be exactly 2 hours, 2.5, 3 hours, whatever, depending on what's going on. You be the one, again, speaking to Bachrim, that don't ask the question because there's no right way to answer it. You may be putting the other person in an uncomfortable position. Say, look, I know we've been out for a while, or I know it's late. I had an even saying, again, Rabbi Lipsker may or may not agree with this, and Shatchanim may or may not agree with it, but there's nothing wrong saying, and this is very nice, but let's start heading home. Saying it's very nice doesn't mean that we're going out again. It just, we're being polite. And there's no contradiction between being polite and a mensch and being chassidish on a date. You have to be a mensch, and you have to be sensitive. So you find a nice way, this was very nice, but I pushed it, I know, and you fill in the blank. I know you have to teach in the morning, or maybe we should start heading home, and so forth. So you end it, and that way, mima nafshach. If you're both not having a good time, then everyone's relieved that you went home. If you did have a good time, it's a nice way to end it on a high, and you get to regroup, and the other one gets to regroup, because you don't know if the other person enjoyed it as much as you, and then you're ready for date 2. And I do, by the way, encourage, unless it's obvious that it's pashut is seklepnisht, I do strongly recommend b'chlal that you give it a second shot. There's so many nerves running through both of you at the time, and sometimes you can't even think clearly. And one other point is, if it's your first time dating, your parents should tell that to the shatchan. And if any shatchanim watch this video, to make sure to notify both sides if one, the other, or both are first-time daters. Even if the girl has gone out a few times and the boy not, so the girl should know it. So if the boy's a little bit rigid and uncomfortable, she's dating a chassidish boy, he's never done this before, there should be some patience. You have a little more experience. So for the shatchanim listening to this, I think it's an important nekuda so that they manage the expectations on the first few days.
Yes, and as you say, the shatchan should mention it. And I've heard people ask that it's completely unmenschlich and insensitive to ask a young woman or even a bacher, is this your first time dating or not? That's completely out of line. And therefore, it should be told privately in a way that she can understand, or he can understand what's going on. Very well said. In general, what you're mentioning about you're ending it, because that's a part of being a man, which we can do a lot of brushing up in yeshiva. We don't necessarily push in that direction, but part of being a zachar and a man is having confidence. And it's time to make a cheshbon nefesh about thinking about marriage, how my confidence is, how my decision making is, and how my not making excuses and blaming others for things that go wrong, taking full responsibility, and what else? And maintaining level-headed situations when there's toughness. On the woman's side, it's not so demanded when it comes to difficulty situation to manage emotions, and that's how the Eibishter made. The women are more emotional, but the man, we're supposed to be more, halten sich beim Sinnen, maintaining sanity, and these are things that are going to come up, and you're going to see how you're doing with yourself and on dates.
To create a sense of security and safety. That's a big part of being the man in the relationship, is to create a safe environment, and that includes ending the date. You've created an environment that's comfortable for everybody, and you took charge and did it. So together with everything else, creating that safe environment, making sure the other person's comfortable, and that you're setting it up for it to succeed. Even if your decision is siklep nicht, you have an achrais to make sure, and you'll only have brachas from the way you treat the person you go out with, even if it doesn't go past date one, to make sure you've done everything that you've given the girl a good experience of safety and kedusha, and at the same time practical to see for both sides a siklep.
Yes, that's very good, and it applies to all the dates, no matter what it is, to be extremely sensitive in the way you answer, the way you tell the shadchan, what's the message that she's going to get, yes or no. And another point, at the end of the first date, if you are sure that you want to go on a second date, you can say it, that I'll be in touch with the shadchan to set up another date. There's nothing wrong to express that, not to leave her.
But not to ask her if she agrees.
Not to ask her.
Because that's putting her in a bad situation.
Right.
But to leave a girl, if you
From
feel
my
comfortable,
end, mention, you can
what
mention.
It does for the girl could be
Right.
very, very positive.
But she doesn't have to wait until the next morning or the next afternoon to know that you're interested in a second date. You already said it. No pressure on you, but from my end.
Yeah. It gets a little bit tricky with that, because then if you're quiet right afterwards, you're hoping she's going to say the same thing.
No, without
You got to be very careful not to create an environment where the girl, in my opinion, where the girl feels an obligation to reciprocate that same feeling.
That's very true. So you have to see how it goes. If most the dating is very modest and very formal, then don't do anything informal so fast.
Right.
What else about the date? Always, I know people today's day and age, I want to go the way I am. I'm going to go with a jeans and a polo shirt, or I'm going to go with just a regular thing. Respect the institution of dating, and tu zachan v'yamensh. A shower, brush your teeth, v'chulu, like you would do to go to a wedding or wherever you're going to go to. You have to. This is not only
tuck yourself in.
Tuck yourself in. If you have a shmata hat and a Shabbos hat, you make sure you dress your
Polish
best.
Your shoes.
Exactly, because you're showing respect to the institution. You're showing respect to the woman. This is not the way I am. Doesn't matter. You better be that way, and you have to. You're honoring the formality, and you're giving it respect of the dating, and that's how it helps it become serious and not just spending time and spending more time without any toichem.
Right. And it's a sign of emotional maturity. So if you're of the approach that seems like a fun and bacherish thing to do, to say, no, she has to accept me as I am, and I just came from a Fabrengen, and my breath smells of herring, and my shirt's out because that's how a Lubavitcher walks around, and what kind of mishagas is this? I want her to know the real me. That's emotional immaturity. You have to give it the respect the other person deserves, to see that you respect them, and the truth is, a girl will want to see that you respect yourself as well. And it's I know it's confusing to transition from being with Bachrim and being in a yeshiva environment all the time to this. It's like a major culture shock. But these are very important nekudas. Don't discount them, and don't see them as overly balabatish and formal. This is basic emotional maturity on your part.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So move on to the second date. And if you talk to the shadchan, or if someone talks to the shadchan, feel free to ask, if they're not offering the feedback, to ask them for the feedback. Is there anything that you think is important for me to know before going on the second date? A good shadchan will tell you already what to know. Be more this, be less that, to try to help get zaytik azachan of nervousness out of the way, or different things. But if they're not offering, you can ask and say, is there anything I should know before going on the next date? It's very good. Sometimes already the second or the third or the fourth, she'll want to go by day, you'll want to go by day. That's another little adjustment of some sort. And like you said before, of course, respect people's schedules and people's times, although it's a priority. But if she's teaching full day, you have to be careful in how late you're schlepping and how late you're starting. And Hanhala will always give you the shush to take off Seder for dating. At least
if they don't,
that's
give
the
them
track
Mashpia
record.
Rabbi Lipsker's cell phone number and let them call him.
Okay. Also in the lingo, what is dating? Meeting a girl, I'm seeing a girl, I'm dating a girl.
Going out with
I'm going out, I'm going in. This is all, it's nice words, but language means things and what it's supposed to be. It's,
I think the Rebbe said going out is not the right way to say
Right.
that. Meeting, right?
It's meeting, exactly. It's pagisha, it's meeting. It's meeting, it's having a meeting. We call it on a date, but technically that's what's happening. You're meeting someone to see what they're like, to share things, etc. So back now to the second date. What's a second date? On the second date, you can a little bit start paying attention to what's called chemistry. Now, chemistry becomes very important, and ultimately it's connected to what the Rebbe calls Mashichas Halev. Doesn't have to happen right away. Some people have it on the first date, some second, some three, some four. And everyone asks, what is Mashichas Halev? And it's a good question. The heart desires. It's definitely not only, we're not talking about physical attraction or
Only.
or specifically, let's call it intimate attraction. We're not talking about that. We're talking, let's use the word chemistry, which is known in the world. And it's kind of where, in English, you say we click. There's click. We laugh together. The interests seem to be, it's fun spending time with each other. You look forward to spending more time with the person. It's pleasant when you're together. You're more relaxed. You don't feel like you have to, judge or manage everything I say. You have to think, how am I going to say it? You can just be more natural and extremely natural. That's when there is a strong chemistry. And sometimes it happens on the second date. Don't expect it to happen on not the third or the fourth, sometimes the fourth. It all depends on how it's going. But that could happen on the second date, sometimes even on the first. Well, what should be a goal on the second date? You need to put at least two things. On this date, I'm going to find out two things, sometimes three things. Make yourself something like that. What would be interesting to find out on a second date? Your relationship with your siblings. Again, we're not getting into us, serious, anything between us, because that's very serious. I would leave that if it's going very good for a third or maybe for a fourth. But on the second date, about how your family structure works, who wears the pants in the house, how the education works, how much pets you get or don't get. That's a little joke, but seriously, you find out family values, how they grow, how it is, how is the chinuch, what's the standards at home.
You're close with your siblings, or you're close with your parents.
Exactly. Things that you find out about, because you want to know about the other person, because that's how you're going to know how your family would be. Ultimately, people take things from the way they grow up, whether to be like that or try not to be like that, if it's dysfunctional, but that's how you find out. So that's not getting too vulnerable on a second date, but that's how you find out. Your passions, hobbies, they can find out on the first, but sometimes more, like, what is your vision? What do you plan to do in life besides, build a family, raise a family? We're dating for that reason. Is there anything else, that interests you? What else? Who do you respect in Lubavitch?
Right. Oh, boy.
We're Lubavitch. I don't mean in a lashon hara or a gossipy way, but in other words, who do you look up to? Who are your mashpiyim? Right. Now, don't judge. Be very careful. Someone who you think is
don't roll your eyes.
Exactly. They can respect someone, and that you think is a nobody because we're in the Chals and Grace of Ashtayers. But these are information to share, and you share with her, which is nice. Experience around the world. Merkah Shluch is not only what you did, that's the first date, but what you learn and your values and how you were taught.
What shluchim you or she worked for, and what was the experience like? Things that give you, on the one end, like Rabbi Lipsker said, it gives you a little more insight to their lives and how, lemashal, if they talk about a shliach that they went to, that you happen to know and you have total respect for, and she's coming from a different perspective and saw it totally different, you make a note to yourself, is this something that we don't necessarily connect on, how we measure a home or a relationship to be, because you also once stayed at this shliach's house. It doesn't mean you get the answer that night, but it's giving you insight without making yourself or the other person get very personal yet. The only other item I would add to the second date are things that came up for you in the first date that you want to make sure if it's an appropriate question to ask, or something else maybe that was bothering you that you want to see on the second date. So you tell yourself, again, every date has a matara to it. I wasn't sure about this. Was she marashcheira or was she smiling? I was so nervous. On the second date, I want to see, is she a positive person or not? Or she mentioned kach v'kach. I want to see tonight if I can bring up a conversation like that again. Does she talk bad about everybody that comes up, or is she a positive person? So you think about the date before and any questions in your mind, and you bring that with you into the second date. Plus, you try to find ways to open up yourself. Always, again, a man's job is to create the environment of safety and open up yourself first, and it allows her to feel comfortable and to open up. So what you're doing is, Rabbi Lipsker put it perfectly, is you're getting more and more insight into the person's life without forcing them to go to a place that they don't feel safe going yet. Remember, hear those words: safety, empathy, security, menschlichkeit. The man should make sure that he's responsible for it. You're going to keep hearing these words because they are from the most important ones that you have to bring with you to the date.
Yeah. Again, and such things on the second date, just take it from there and use your imagination about any other thing: camp experience, work experience, business. Which couple do you look up to as a nice family, shalom bayis? Which ones of your aunts and uncles or siblings would you think is a family to look up to learn from? Such things. You're not getting. It is a vulnerability about their opinions. That's what basically on the second or even the third date, you're looking on their family structure, their life, where they came from, and their opinions about things. So it's not so much vulnerable, effen and zich, opening up themselves, but you do get to learn about people from their opinions.
It's indirect, but trust me when I tell you, it's very powerful. It's in some ways even more insightful than a direct question. And just one other nakuda here from the first date and the second date, in addition to being empathetic, they're all interrelated, is to listen a lot. Don't just talk and talk and talk. And whether it's a girl that may be eventually seeing this video or the boy, make sure that you're listening to the other person and you're giving them a chance to express themselves. And it's good for you as well, because otherwise, I know people that went on dates for 4 hours and they come home and they know nothing about the other person. If he's Uktman, a bacha goes on a date and 4 hours, he's talking. Finally, at the end, he says, enough about me. What do you think about me? You have to be sensitive, and it'll give you, if you listen with both ears, you're going to learn a lot about the person, even when you're just talking about their family structure. It's very, very helpful and very valuable what you can learn, and it's also the menschliche way to be on a date. You speak, you ask a question, and you listen. You don't think already about your next question because you're nervous. Relax. Try to remind yourself that you're here to also listen to the other person. It shows respect, and it's also wise. So when you go home, you feel you really learned a lot about that person.
And by the way, another sign of comfortable between people is when silence moments are not awkward. It's okay and natural to just pause of time. There's nothing to say for a minute silence. And 30 seconds. It doesn't become uncomfortable silence. What else for about the second date? What you were mentioning, that opinions about things give away sometimes personalities because they're not you're not talking openly about yourself, but you can get to know people in direct ways. Yes, opinions about, you can go, as long as you got to keep it respectful and be careful of gossip and lashon hara. But you can talk about the school system, the school you went to, the teachers you had, the principal. Nothing wrong to share your experience, and she'll share her experience of the arum, which is what you get to learn a lot about the type of person they are.
Okay, 2 dates. Mazel tov. Invite us to the l'chaim.
And then we move on to the third date. By the way, if you feel that you're not having too much of a chance to talk, the Gemara zakt that the 9-to-1 ratio is still kosher. If she talks, actually not 9-to-1, it's in the stomach 9.5-to-1. Yeah. If she talks for 9.5 minutes and you can only get 30 seconds, it's still kosher.
If that works for you, you have to know yourself. Again, you have to know yourself. But in general, that ratio tends to hold true for 51% of the world.
And then sometimes people are more introverted, not so outgoing. So, you manage that. Hopefully you found out somewhat about when there was research going on in the families. And, like I said last time, in the Frumme Welt, in the Lubavitch world for sure, we know so much about each other and the families before we even meet, then the people out there in the world know about each other after a year of dating. So that's the advantage that we have. And so you're not trying to find out new information that you don't know. You might know already a lot, but more on a personal angle, especially from the second date, about their observations, their opinions, etc. On the third date, it's already for short time to talk about real values and goals, and you can even you want to find out from her. Sometimes you can, if you're savvy or smart, in a relationship, you can bring situations to find out their patience, tolerance level, traffic, driving, how the other one is reacting to whatever it is, honking horns and people doing silly things or idiots around, etc.
The waiter bringing a glass of water, is there a nasty comment because they took too long? These are all little signs that you watch for both sides to see, again, the midas.
Right, because that's basically a lot what we're looking for when it comes to marriage. It's all about relationship, and relationships, in the vast majority of it, is on the emotional level. And so on the third date, yes, you're already looking for strong values and about yourself, but values also about what you're, I don't know if you need to ask on the third date, if it's going good, what you're looking for in a husband. But that's a fair question. If it's going right, you can wait till the fourth date sometimes, but the third date is perfectly fine. But also about your values, what you want a home to look like. What type of home do you vision now, in 10 years, in 20 years? What type of home do you want to bring up your children in? These are fair questions. It does become tricky when we talk about such personal things, and we will need to become vulnerable, because ultimately on a date, when you're meeting the person fourth or fifth time, you need to become vulnerable, because otherwise the emotion is not always honest. Vulnerable means you're comfortable enough to share with the person things that you're not going to share with every person on the street. That's a bit of vulnerability. Who should start? Should the girl start? Should the guy start? It becomes, it's tricky. It's tricky. Sometimes women are more available and they'll do it. Sometimes they're not trusting. Remember, safe and secure. If they don't feel safe and secure, why should they open themselves up to you? You didn't create that environment. You're the guy. You have to do it. So, and also by taking the lead and sharing about yourself, well, there are difficult moments. People, there could be so many issues in life, tragedies of relatives, or illness, or lack of parnas, or different difficulties, or happy things, and struggles, or different things. You don't have to give away. We're not talking about giving away personal, private, very private things, but that's vulnerability. How you were in vulnerable moments and sharing about your personal self, which is key to create real closeness for the next level, to speed things up in a faster way.
Yeah, I agree. First of all, it is hard to open up and to be vulnerable. And if the boy is not, I think it should be first on the bacher. But this message is for everybody. And if a girl's not getting it from the bacher because he maybe, Men have a hard time getting in touch with their emotions and being vulnerable. Pashut b'teva. You still need to get your answer. So if it requires for you to take the initiative, don't hesitate and wait for the bacher to do so. But a bacher should definitely try to be the one that creates that environment. Something that to me is, I always find very challenging many times for bacherim and girls that are dating. It's a very strange experience. On the one hand, of course, especially if you heard nice things, you want to make the guy, the bacher, like you. You want to make the girl like you. Mitzad Sheni, what we're trying to do here is to filter through and see if the real me and the real you are very compatible. So on the one hand, we tell you, even if you're a shlamazel at home and a shlump, go tucked in with polished shoes and brush your teeth, we have to tell you. On the other hand, we're telling you, you have to be willing to be vulnerable in a way that for someone, it may not look good. And you're not sure if they're going to like that, but it's the real you. And, you know, the Rebbe talks about this idea of the hashgacha pratis involved in making a shidduch. If this one thing you say is a warning bell to the other person and it doesn't work out, that was the hashgacha pratis. That was your protection, that it was not your bashert. So on the one hand, you have to do everything right and respectful and put yourself out there like a mensch. On the other, you're not on a sales call. You're not there to sell. You're there to be as real as you can be in the hopes that she's comfortable and she'll be as real as she can be, and then see if there's, as Rabbi Lipsker said, meshichas halev, the chemistry. The world has tried to figure out the ingredients for this chemistry, and it's not one thing, it's a whole package. Sometimes on paper a shidduch looks perfect, but they go out and episklepnish. They go home and they're not staying up late at night hoping that they get to see the person again the next day or the next day. But part of it is not to convince someone to like you, it's to be real without being insulting to yourself or to the other person. So it may seem like a contradiction, but it's not. And it's very important to get to a place where you can be vulnerable. You don't have to share every deep, dark secret you have in your life. But the things that are important about you, what make you tick, things you've seen in siblings' homes and their marriages that work or don't work. And it gives the other person insight as to what kind of home you want. Don't worry about will she or he like what they hear. Be very real. The third date starts transitioning. Something else, and I don't know if you have it scheduled for later, is that at least from the people I talk to, the third date's also a time to make sure you get answers to big words that your parents looked into, and they're big words, we'll get to them in a minute, and to start getting your own answers for what the expectations are. The big words are your definition of chassidus. There are guys out there that officially are chassidus, and you say, what does chassidus mean? You do chitas and rambam. Do you go on miftzayim? You know, what means chassidus? So the parents already, older people, they don't know what's going on today, what their new definitions are. And even if they did all the research, your definition of chassidus, you should talk to your mashpia about it. You should talk to people you respect about, to help you identify when you see the kind of chassidus you believe in, you should see it and know what it looks like. On that third date, you start figuring that out. Rabbi Lipsker mentioned earlier to me, what does chassidus look like by a girl? It's very different than by a boy. You want a girl that says that she chazes a maimer every Shabbos afternoon? Is that what chassidus is for a girl? And maybe for you it is. So you need to get answers to the big word, shlichus. So do you want shlichus? Or I heard you want shlichus. Does that mean no matter what? It's a big question. Or no matter where? Are you ready to go to Ukraine? Are you ready to go to China? Or in America, are you ready to do youth programs? Those kind of conversations, again, there's no one set of rules, but in theory, on the third date, if not the third, maybe the fourth, these type of questions, you're starting to have serious conversations about things, even if your parents did research and they said she is chassidish, you start getting answers to what that means to you and if it matches.
Right, exactly. Sometimes frumkeit and chassidishkeit are confusing. Sometimes the concept of do you want to go on shlichus, it's not really about shlichus, it's about what kind of social life you want, what kind of You want to be, I don't want to work too hard. I want to just be a mother. I don't want to have a community responsibility. It's not negea to shlichus. That could be, a community position anywhere, even not in the misgeris of shlichus. So these are to clarify many things. Yes, to get good clarity on issues is very good to start then.
And no, but also with negea to the shlichus question, today there's a lot of bachrim and girls that some will say, no matter what, there's no plan B at shlichus.
I mentioned that last time.
Even the girls. So what happens? A bacher should have a conversation. Say, if it's 2 years in, I'm the man. I'm supposed to make sure I give you security, and I'm waiting. I'm sitting in koilel, and I'm calling anyone I know, look for a position, and I'm willing to do it. But would you accept that after 2 years, if I need to get a job, would you lose respect for me? And there are girls out there who would say, yes, no matter what, there is no plan B. We have to find it no matter what. And then also the vice versa for the girls. You have boys like that. It could be a beautiful thing, that kind of mesiras nefesh. You just have to make sure it's compatible, that you both feel the same way about these type of things.
Yeah. What else? On dates, sometimes you'll start noticing that we all have baggage, and we all have things we come in with. We all have our personalities, our struggles, and as mentioned last time, you can notice things that have maybe unresolved issues, and we should not bring unresolved issues into a marriage. As I mentioned last time, unresolved doesn't mean cured, it means managed. Very well managed, I'm stable and managing 100%, hopefully, even with my struggles and the issues or experiences I've been through, etc., etc. What about mentioning things on dates that were not mentioned? There's some allergies I have. Do I have to mention them to the other person before I'm married? These are good questions, consult a Rav. But third, if it's going serious, whatever needs to be mentioned before the wedding should not be mentioned after you get engaged. If al pi halacha it needs to be mentioned before the wedding, it's time to do so when the dating gets serious, 3, 4, 5, because maybe not even past the 4th. If it's something that has to be mentioned before the wedding, al pi halacha, then you have to mention it now, because otherwise it's not fair for the person. But you do it after you see that there's an understanding and the person really is interested. So then, they'll take it with level-headedness and really understand, whether it's some financial, whether it's, there could be bachram have financial debt, there could be past experiences, there could be emotional issues, there could be psychological issues, there could be physical health, whatever else it is. These are important things the other person should know, and it's part of being vulnerable the proper way. And it is definitely being responsible.
And you should ask beforehand how to word it properly. It's okay to go to somebody and ask for help with it. And the other thing is, again, you talk about having the brachas to find the right shidduch for you, and all the brachas that come with finding the right shidduch for life, is to be extremely mature, and whatever you learn on that date, even if you don't end up continuing with that person, that you never share it with anyone. It's not for you to share with other people. Someone was very vulnerable with you and shared very deep matters, and you have to be very careful. Also, Rabbi Lipsker mentioned at the beginning of this session, at the beginning of this session, he had mentioned this thing about not putting it on WhatsApp who you're dating. You have a friend that you want to be meyayitz with, that's fine. Be very careful, because if it doesn't work out for you and everybody knows about it, then the next guy's going to say, I'm not taking his shirayim. And in the meantime, a pasha wasn't a good match maybe, but this girl could be perfect for the boy. So be very, very careful with anonymity and with confidence, etc.
Very good. What else? Next, let's move on to the 4th. I know time is a little short. We'll go a little bit over time. But it's what happens. You're trying to get more serious and it doesn't go. You need to give yourself a push. Take advice from somebody. Take advice. Both in your head, start imagining and picturing yourself with this woman in 10 years. Do I see myself? You can start this from the second date, having a home with her. Then you can talk about together what would, obviously, the 4th date for sure. What are you looking for in a husband? What are you looking for in a wife? Do you see in me? How much of it do you see in me? What you're looking for? or the other way around. And this is very personal, and it's important. Just mentioning Derech Agav, because I've heard of this, people want to bring ruchnius into the date. So they're going to bring tzedakah, let's give tzedakah. Again, it depends on the personality. Sometimes you have to be natural. You have to be natural, normal. One thing I do have to mention, people ask, we should maybe learn something together on a date. No, not before you're married.
I was worried you were going to say something else.
Beferish not. You can repeat Advar Torah. I once saw a guy from a little yeshiva try to tell the woman he was dating at Rab Chaim that he learned that day in yeshiva. She was just doing it was pretty awkward. You can say something, Iber Zagan Epes, and share something you learned, and look at the Torah, Hayem Yem, Asicha, whatever. But learning together, that is definitely out of place before you're married, because that's a boundary that needs to be respected. Again, what helps to make things more serious, a little more fuzzy, taking a walk, go to the water, the things that you can bring out more. Again, you have to also know where the other person is holding, ask for feedback once it's getting serious. Where are you holding? Where are you holding? And ultimately, you're going to have to take the real step to what we call in the secular world, propose.
Just again, practical advice. I know we're running late, but let's say you decide that you want to create a different environment for a date. It is good to coordinate with the shadchan if you're going to, let's say, be outdoors. Maybe it's an evening. Maybe you're going to walk a lot. The girl should have comfortable shoes on, or a coat, because you decided to a different environment, that you're going to walk up this street somewhere in the Main Street, USA. So sharing that information before sets it up with everybody knowing what the situation is going to be, and they come properly equipped for it and properly prepared.
What happens also as dating gets very serious, and a friend or a parent or a shadchan, so how do you feel? And many Baruch will say, I don't know, I'm not sure, I don't know, I'm not sure. Make sure you have a very clear picture. I'm not sure because what's going on her, or most of the time, I'm not sure because I'm not in touch with myself. I don't know how I feel because I don't know myself. And that's a problem which should have been taken care of before dating, but if not, now make sure the message is there that it's my issue and not her issue. I need to sort out my feelings. And you really need to talk to someone, because sometimes lack of confidence or indecisiveness or lack of in touch with our feelings, although Chassidus is supposed to be so much about Birid HaMidas, L'shanos Teva Midas, I keep mentioning that and knowing how we feel. And when you sit with a person, even for 5 minutes, your feelings should get going, and what type of, you deal with miftzayim things, you deal with people. We're not insular in Lubavitch. We deal with people all the time. And how you feel about things, but sometimes we ignore, we don't know. We're kind of, let's put it, automatic. We're in automatic mode. On dating, you have to let go and not be in automatic mode, and really be in experience mode. How am I feeling now, or how was I feeling? And you can ask her, how are you feeling? Are you feeling comfortable? Am I talking too fast? Am I talking too slow? I'm talking fast this whole hour because I know that there's a lot to talk about and I want to finish. But thank you, Rabbi Bistritsky, for slowing it down. Anything else you want to say about bringing this dating seriously?
I think that you have to know yourself, and if you have a hard time making decisions, bichlal, you were offered 2 places to go to camp, and for you, the idea of making that decision last summer, Pashut caused you heartburn. You're not that person that knows how to make decisions. These are some of the things Rabbi Lipsker was addressing last week that should be addressed before you go out, because in life there's always going to be important big decisions that you're going to have to make. Talk to someone, talk to your parents, ask your parents if maybe there's someone you can speak to help you sort out how you really know what is right for you. Not being able to make decisions, in my opinion, is in line with some of the other serious issues that Rabbi Lipsker mentioned last week, because you're going to put a girl through that, and then every date you don't know, and I don't know, and I don't know. And it's not fair for you, it's not fair for that person. So you need to create an environment that you can get comfortable. Excuse me. It may be a Yedid HaMaven. Rabbi Lipsker was mentioning to me earlier, a dating coach that he knows of. And maybe for Bachman, there's nothing wrong to do this before they ever go on their first date. especially if you're not the kind of person that's in touch with your feelings or know how to make decisions, or you're not sure if you are one that is considered being in touch with your feelings, that you can trust yourself. There's nothing wrong saying to your parents and everyone here, you know how to reach Rabbi Lipsker. You find out about this person, Rabbi Lipsker holds very highly of, and let your parents set up a phone call to help you. And then if you have that confidence, if a professional tells you, Yedida Maven says to you, could be an uncle, could be a Zayda, could be your father that really knows you and you connect well, or your mother, and they tell you, I'm telling you, I know how you think, I know how you're in touch with yourself, trust yourself. Then you should trust them. And if your parents or people close to you are telling you, you should. If you don't get that support, or if you don't have that connection at home, don't be shy. Ask for help to figure out if you're prepared to be dating yet and make those kind of decisions.
Very good. Another few points just to make. Sometimes a mashpia you had in yeshiva who helped you as a bacher may not be qualified to help you through dating. Many yes, many not. If you feel you're not getting real help and is really getting a holach of what's going on in today's world of dating, or just not being helpful, and it's just kind of you're getting kabbalas oil heiras, that you're not really understanding what's going on, then there's nothing bad about the person. It's just the way it is. Something comes up today a lot where during meetings, dating, or before, where people say, I don't know how chassidish I am. Do I need the tznius girl, the cool girl? The everyone wants the tznius girl, but in the world. The chassidish bacher, but feet on the ground. All these words, we're not sure even know what they mean. Find out about that on the third date. But these are things that you have to be honest with yourself. You will learn about them when you meet, and these are good questions. Without judging, you have to find out if it's okay for you or not, because you have a certain standard, or you have expectation, what type of home you want when it comes to tznius, to dress, to way of talk, etc. And then you're on a date. The woman you're dating is very lovely, and you like, and you think you're attracted to each other, but she has more of a worldly. The way she talks or walks or dresses, and you don't know, what's this going to be in my home? How is this going to work? Because you can't get married thinking that people are going to change, because most people don't change.
Could you say that one more time for everybody? No, seriously. People don't go out with someone based on what you hope they will be or they say they'll be. Assume that who they are right now is who they are. We hope, Chassidish boys and girls, you're going to grow, but assume the person sitting across from you is going to be exactly as they are right now.
Right. But you do have to find out if it's a philosophy, if it's a shitter. It's just the way it is. I'll tell you a few stories. There was a Chassidish bacher in the Yuds, in the Shins, but the Frierdiker Rebbe, who suggested a shidduch, and he flipped out when the mashpia suggested him to go out with that girl, because she was known when she goes out with her friends, she wore pants. And he said, "Was? Crazy." I don't remember if the Frierdiker Rebbe said it himself to him, or the Frierdiker Rebbe had the mashpia, whoever say it to him, but it came from the Frierdiker Rebbe that's not who she is. She does it because of her friends. Once she'll meet you, everything will change. And that's exactly what happened. A very frum Rebbetzin, holy woman, very known in Lubavitch. And there's another, also a Chassidish bacher, very frum bacher, who had a suggestion to go out of shidduch. And he came back, and the Rebbe said no. He said, "No way." He said, "No way," because she had nail polish on her toes. So the Rebbe said, who asked, "You're not supposed to look." So in other words, because this was just, that's the way, it was the fashion of the moment, but it wasn't that was her way, and she said, right, "That's the way I am, and that's the way I do things." Because of course, to please the husband, the woman will act the way, to be nice, but it depends. That's what it is. If it's a way, I believe in this is how I do it, and this is what I think is fine, this is my level of tznius, that's it. Don't expect people to change. And also, when you're going to talk about these things, she's going to pick up what type of husband you have to, what type of man are you in the house? You're the boss and you're the king, and whatever I say goes because the man rules the house, or there's or I'm not sure, and she's going to have to be in control, and things like that. But you do have to know that, there's short term and there's long term. What you think is good for you, because now many people that go to their mother and say, Ma, I went on shluchas, I was in a smicha program, I'm not the chsiddish guy, I was in Zal, I have a different opinion of the world, you get me a cool girl. And then it was not really who he was, and a year after the marriage, everything is kaput because you wasn't honest, or the other way around. So again, honesty, you have to talk to a mashpia.
Honesty with yourself, Rabbi Lipsker
Yes.
saying. A couple once came to me after 2 years of marriage and a child. The girl was what they would call, again, down-to-earth girl, but a good girl. And she had an amazing year in seminary, and she came back very inspired. It was a year that was one long chassidische Farbrengen. She came back and she said, I want to go on shlichus and I want a chassidische bacher and all that. And started dating right away, and according to her ideals that she had in seminary, and a year and a half after marriage, she says to me that she's not happy. She married the wrong person. She's more of the one that was in high school, fun, and this and that, and wants money and nice things. So you need to be able, this is part of the matara of this whole thing, is, again, to address these kind of things. On the one hand, if you ask me, you should imagine what you want your einiklach to look like. And make sure you're sharing a vision of that. Is it important to us to have einiklach, that chassidisha and mekusharim? Again, what does mekusha mean? But if chas v'sham we were still in galus, do we share what we want our family to look like long term? On the other hand, it can't only be that, because right now, that ideal and who you are at the moment don't match. Is what I want in the future, I think I want, but you may not even step up and do what you want towards that. So you have to be very careful to mix the two. A lot of the questions that come up during shidduchim, do I marry someone that's more chassidish than me, more from me to raise me up, or someone that's at my level, and will we ever grow? If you both are clear on what the shared vision should look like, and there's chemistry and all those other things, and where we are at today, if it doesn't change, we can respect each other. Now you're starting to formulate the magic formula.
Right. But in the end, we learn and we daven and we grow, and there's always room to grow as long as the base is stable. I know there are many questions that are coming in, and there's no time to answer all of them, perhaps in a future time. And again, like I mentioned, this video conference is just a starting point for Bachrim. Find people, make groups together, get people to come to you. If you're lucky, catch Rabbi Bistritsky, rent out all the Torah, put 1,500 seats in, and fill the hall.
Lipsker is the expert.
But
I'm the balagala.
Things like that, because it's just a starting point of giving you things to think about. And again, there's a part of it that's called chad lefum shuru delay, when the dating gets very serious, and you need to know how to close the deal. But I'm not sure. Am I feeling close enough? Is she feeling close enough? And I don't want to be ready because she says she's ready. So can I ask the shadchan, where is she holding? Because I'm not sure, then it's coming from an unhealthy place. A lot of these things need to come from a place of strength. I think I'm ready to move forward. I don't want to shock her and surprise her, so I can call the shadchan to ask where she's holding. I think she really is ready, but maybe my intuition is off. I want to call the shadchan to see if I'm guessing, am I getting her, am I not getting her? That's a fair way. And a lot of these things really depend on intuition. What's meant intuition? Intuatia in Hebrew, but a good description I heard of intuition is when the ruchnius, the seichel, the midas, and the practical are all matched up. It feels right, beruchnius, it makes sense in seichel, it feels right, and it looks good, begashmius, the way the behavior looks right. And then you're on and again, we need to have a lot of brachas, tremendous amount of brachas for gesunte kinder, for shalom bayis. And for that, you need to have a good connection with the Eibishter, good bitachon, good emunah, betzachos bam oihel, do the right thing, make the right keli, and the Eibishter will send each one, the basherta shidduch, the gesunte shidduch, and we should all have binyan adayad, banim b'nei banim, iskim b'teira u'b'mitzvahs. Thank you very much.
Amen. Thank you.